When the auction began, there was a sense of nervous excitement in the air. People crowded the room, their eyes flicking over the strange and mysterious items for sale. It wasn't just any ordinary auction. It was a chance to buy something that could change their lives forever. Among the various items on display was a cryopod, sealed tightly and glowing faintly in the dim light. The crowd hushed as the auctioneer's voice rang out, announcing the start of the bidding. "I'll start the bid at 1 million, the auctioneer sighed, looking out over the crowd. The price quickly soared as eager hands shot into the air. Some were driven by curiosity, others by the hope of owning something truly extraordinary. But one bidder, sitting quietly at the back, seemed more intent than the rest. He wasn't a collector, nor was he someone seeking fame. His name was Jack Turner, a man with a secret mission, one that would soon push him into a reality far more dangerous than he could have imagined. Jack watched the numbers on the screen climb higher and higher. He had done his research. This pod wasn't just any piece of rare technology. It contained the last of an alien species. The last werewolf. The thought made his heart race. He knew that owning such an artifact would be worth far more than money. It would bring him answers. What he didn't realize was that the answers would come with unexpected consequences. With a final bid of 10 million, Jack won. The room erupted into murmurs as the pod was carefully sealed and prepared for transport. He couldn't believe it. The alien werewolf, the last of its kind, was now his. As the pod was delivered to his private residence, Jack couldn't contain his excitement. He had been dreaming of this day for years. But what awaited inside was something he never could have prepared for. The pod opened with a soft hiss, revealing the alien creature inside. It was more magnificent than he could have imagined. An elegant white-furred werewolf with striking yellow eyes and an air of mystery. Her beauty was otherworldly, yet there was something fierce about her. The moment her eyes locked with Jack's, something in the air shifted. She wasn't just any creature, she was a survivor, a force of nature. And she was awakening from a long slumber. Jack stepped closer, but before he could reach her, the creature stirred, a low growl vibrating in her chest. It was then that Jack realized he had just brought something far more dangerous into his life. What had he gotten himself into? The air in Jack's home felt heavy as he stared at the alien werewolf. She was still, almost lifeless, but the tension in her posture told him she was very much aware of her surroundings. Her eyes glowed in the dim light, yellow and piercing, and Jack couldn't help but feel the weight of her gaze. Every instinct told him to step back, but his curiosity held him in place. The creature's breathing was shallow, as if she were recovering from some deep sleep. Jack slowly approached the pod, his steps cautious, careful not to startle her. He had read everything he could about alien species, but nothing prepared him for this. She was unlike any creature he had ever seen. Her body was covered in soft, white fur, and her ears were pointed like those of a cat. Her fangs, though subtle, were sharp and dangerous. But it was her eyes that unsettled him the most. They were wild, ancient, and full of a life Jack couldn't comprehend. He gently touched the control panel beside the pod, triggering its release. The glass door opened with a soft hiss, and the air inside the pod shifted. The creature's eyes snapped open, and for a brief moment, Jack thought she might attack. But instead, she just watched him, her gaze intense, almost searching. Jack stepped back, giving her space. "It's all right," he said softly, though he wasn't sure if she could understand him. "I won't hurt you." The creature didn't move for a long while. Then, as if something inside her shifted, she stood up, slowly and with purpose. Jack felt a surge of adrenaline as he realized just how tall she was, easily over 6 feet. She stretched her limbs, her muscles rippling beneath her fur, and for a moment, Jack saw the strength that lay beneath her elegant exterior. "Who are you?" Jack asked quietly, his voice trembling slightly. To his surprise, the alien werewolf didn't growl or retreat. She tilted her head slightly, as if processing his words. Then, in a low, rumbling voice that sounded almost like a whisper, she spoke. "Illyra," she said, her voice rough, like it hadn't been used in years. "I am Illyra." Jack felt a shiver run down his spine. She had spoken, and it wasn't just any alien language. She had spoken in perfect English. The realization hit him. Like a wave, this was no ordinary creature. Illyra wasn't just a werewolf. She was intelligent, capable of understanding and communicating. She had been alive for centuries, perhaps longer, trapped in that cryopod. And now, she was free. But what did she want? Illyra's eyes flickered toward him, and Jack couldn't shake the feeling that she was sizing him up, as if she were assessing whether he was friend or foe. The tension between them was thick. Jack had no idea what to do next. This alien werewolf was no mere curiosity. She was a being with power, with history, and with a purpose that Jack had yet to understand. Why was I kept in that pod? Illyra's voice was almost a growl now, full of frustration and confusion. "What is this place?" Jack opened his mouth to answer, but before he could say anything, a sudden crash from outside interrupted them. His heart raced. What was that? Illyra's ears perked up, and she bared her teeth. "There are others," she growled. "They know I'm free." The hairs on the back of Jack's neck stood up. Who were they, and why had they locked Illyra away? Jack's pulse quickened as the door to his home rattled violently. The sound of heavy footsteps echoed through the hallway. Illyra's stance shifted. She was no longer the graceful, confused creature she had been moments ago. She was ready for battle. The war, it seemed, had already begun. The door to Jack's home rattled once more, louder this time. The heavy thuds of boots could be heard echoing through the hallway. Illyra growled softly under her breath, her eyes flashing with a wild intensity. Jack instinctively stepped back. But there was nowhere to retreat. He had to face whatever was coming, and he wasn't sure if he could keep Illyra safe. "They're here," she whispered, her voice low and filled with a predatory tone. "And they won't stop until they have." "Me back." Jack's mind raced. Who were these people? And why was Illyra so important? The answers were just beyond his grasp, but there was no time to think. The footsteps grew closer. He could hear their voices now, muffled but unmistakable. "Where is she?" "We know she's here," one of the voices barked. "We can't let her." "Escape," another voice replied, cold and harsh. Jack's heart pounded in his chest. His hand instinctively reached for his phone, but his fingers froze on the screen. What was he supposed to do now? Call the authorities? But who would believe him? No one would understand the reality of the situation. His only hope now was to keep Illyra safe. Illyra's ears twitched as she listened to the approaching footsteps. Her eyes narrowed, and she turned toward Jack, her expression serious. "They're not here to negotiate," she said. "They will kill anyone who stands in their way." Jack's mind spun. He could see the determination in her eyes, and he knew she was right. Whoever these people were, they were dangerous. He needed to act fast. Without another word, Illyra leaped toward the window, her movements swift and graceful. She landed effortlessly. On the ground below, her legs bent like a spring before she straightened and looked up at Jack. Her white fur glowed in the faint light, and the power in her stance was undeniable. "Come on," Illyra shouted. "We don't have much time." Jack hesitated for only a moment before following her. He grabbed his coat, rushing toward the window. He had no idea what was happening, but there was no turning back now. Whatever secrets Illyra held, they were about to be exposed. And the world he knew was about to change forever. Outside, the cold night air hit Jack's skin like a sharp slap, but he didn't have time to feel the chill. He followed Illyra through the shadows, his heart racing as they moved swiftly through the dark alleyways, Illyra was ahead of him, her enhanced senses allowing her to track their pursuers. Jack could hear the sound of footsteps behind them, getting closer. He had no idea how fast they were, but he knew they couldn't outrun whoever was after them. Illyra's ears twitched as she stopped in her tracks, motioning for Jack to remain silent. She turned her head slightly, eyes scanning the area. She could smell them now. They were close, too close. "They've caught up," she whispered, her voice low but sharp. "We need to fight." Jack's eyes widened in fear. He had no experience with fighting, especially not against these people. But before he could speak, Illyra moved with incredible speed, her body shifting into a more predatory stance. She was ready to fight. "Stay close," she ordered, her voice steady. "I'll handle them." Suddenly, a figure emerged from the darkness, stepping into the weak light cast by a nearby street lamp. The man was tall, with a cold, calculating expression on his face. He wore a black tactical suit, and his eyes were hidden behind a dark visor. "Where is she?" The man growled, his voice echoing in the empty street. Illyra bared her teeth, her fangs gleaming in the light. "You'll never take me again," she snarled, her voice a growl of pure fury. The man stepped forward, his hand reaching for a weapon at his side. But before he could draw it, Illyra lunged at him with incredible speed. She moved so quickly that Jack could barely follow her, and with a swift swipe of her claws, the man was knocked back, stumbling onto the ground. But more figures appeared from the shadows, emerging one by one. Jack's heart sank. There were too many of them. "We need a plan," Jack shouted to Illyra, but she was already moving, her claws flashing as she took on another attacker. Jack had no idea how they were going to survive this. But one thing was clear, this fight was only the beginning. The fight escalated quickly. Illyra moved like a blur, her claws slashing through the air as she took on one attacker after another. Jack had never seen anything like it. Her strength, speed, and agility were beyond human comprehension. But the enemies kept coming. They were well-trained, relentless, and seemingly endless. Jack's mind raced as he ducked behind a dumpster. For cover, he had to do something. He couldn't just hide while Illyra fought. But what could he do against these well-armed strangers? He had no weapons, no experience, and no plan. Yet, as he looked at Illyra, fighting with all her might, something inside him stirred. He had to help. She was depending on him. He glanced around, desperate for anything that could give them an edge. His eyes landed on a discarded metal pipe lying near the alley. Without thinking, he grabbed it, his hands shaking as he held it tight. It wasn't much, but it was something. Jack stood up and ran toward the closest attacker. He swung the pipe wildly, striking the man across the back. The blow wasn't powerful enough to take him down, but it did force him to stumble. Illyra, seeing the opportunity, leapt onto the man's back, her claws sinking into his shoulders. She threw him to the ground effortlessly, knocking him unconscious with a single blow. "Not bad," Illyra said, panting heavily as she wiped blood from her fur. "But there's more coming." Jack nodded, his breath heavy with adrenaline. He couldn't believe how quickly things had spiraled out of control. Who were these people? Why were they after Illyra? Before he could voice his thoughts, a voice echoed through the alley. "We don't have time for this." Another figure stepped forward, this one taller and more menacing than the others. He wore a dark military-style uniform and had a scar running down his face. His eyes were cold, calculating as he surveyed the scene. "Illyra," he said, his voice deep and authoritative. "You don't have to make this difficult. Come with us now, and we can end this without further bloodshed." Illyra's eyes narrowed and her teeth bared once more. "I'm not going anywhere with you." The man sighed, as if he had expected this response. "You don't have a choice. You're the last of your kind, and the experiments we've conducted on you are far from over. You were never meant to be free. You belong to us." The words hit Jack like a punch to the gut. Experiments? Illyra had been experimented on? His mind raced as the pieces started to fall into place. Illyra wasn't just some alien werewolf. She was the product of something far more sinister. She had been captured, held captive, and forced into a lab for experiments. And now, after all these years, they were coming to take her back. The man took a step closer, his hand resting on the weapon at his side. "You were a mistake, Illyra. A failed experiment, but we can fix you. We can make you better." Illyra's expression hardened. "I am not a mistake," she growled, her voice full of fury. "And I will never go back to you." Jack's heart pounded in his chest. He looked at Illyra, seeing the pain in her eyes. She wasn't just fighting for survival, she was fighting for her freedom, for her dignity. She had been tortured for so long, and now, these people wanted to take everything from her again. But Jack wouldn't let that happen. He couldn't. "I won't let you take her," Jack said, his voice steady despite the fear swirling inside him. He gripped the pipe tightly, ready to defend Illyra with everything he had. He didn't know if he could win, but he wasn't going to stand by while they took her back. The man laughed coldly, his eyes gleaming with amusement. "You really think you can stop us?" Before Jack could answer, Illyra was already moving. She lunged toward the man with a speed that caught him off guard. She knocked him back, sending him crashing into a stack of crates. The sound of the impact echoed through the alley as Illyra stood over him, her claws outstretched and her eyes burning with fierce determination. "I've had enough of you," she snarled. The man slowly got up, wiping the blood from his lip. "You'll regret this, Illyra. We won't stop until we have you back." Illyra's eyes darkened. "Then you'll have to kill me first." Jack watched, amazed at the strength and defiance Illyra showed. He had no idea how this battle would end, but one thing was clear: he was no longer just a bystander. He was in this fight with her, and he wasn't going to let her face it alone. The battle was far from over, and Jack and Illyra were only just beginning to uncover the truth about what these people really wanted. The secrets behind the cryopod, the experiments, and the forces trying to tear them apart were all still hidden, waiting to be discovered, but they would fight together. The silence after the battle was deafening. Jack and Illyra stood in the alley, their breathing heavy, their bodies battered from the fight. The enemies they had faced were not ordinary soldiers. They were trained, skilled, and dangerous. Yet, despite their numbers, Illyra had managed to fight them off with sheer strength and determination. The man who had spoken earlier, the one with the scar on his face, had retreated after Illyra's powerful strike. But Jack knew this was far from over. "We need to move," Illyra said, her voice low and filled with urgency. "They won't stop. They'll send more after us." Jack nodded, his mind racing. He had never imagined his life would spiral into something like this. He had simply bought an auction item, an alien cryopod. But now he was caught in the middle of something far larger, something much darker. He couldn't ignore it any longer. What were they talking about? Jack asked, his voice trembling slightly. The experiments, what did they mean? Illyra paused for a moment, her gaze distant, as if remembering something painful. She looked at Jack, her eyes filled with sorrow and a quiet rage. They were part of a project. She began, her voice barely a whisper. A secret project designed to create the perfect weapon. They took my kind, the alien werewolves, and experimented on us. They tried to make us stronger, faster, more lethal. But in the end, all they created was pain and suffering. Jack listened intently, his heart heavy with the weight of her words. He could see the pain in her eyes as she spoke, a pain that had been hidden for so long. I was one of the last, she continued. They froze me, kept me in that pod, thinking I was dead. But they were wrong. I survived, and now they want me back. They think they can finish their work. But they're wrong. I won't let them do it. Not to me, and not to anyone else. Jack swallowed hard, the weight of her words sinking in. He had known there was something more to Illyra than met the eye, but hearing her speak about the experiments, about the horrors she had endured, it was more than he could have ever imagined. We need to find out who's behind all of this, Jack said, his voice firm. We can't just keep running. We have to stop them. Illyra looked at him for a long moment, as if weighing his words. Then, with a slow nod, she spoke. You're right, she said. But it's not going to be easy. They've been hunting me for years. They'll do anything to get me back, and they won't hesitate to kill anyone in their way. I don't care, Jack said, his voice unwavering. I won't let them hurt you. We'll take them down together. Illyra studied him carefully, as if trying to understand what motivated him. After a long silence, she finally spoke again. All right. But we need to be smart about this. We need to find their base of operations, uncover their secrets, and expose them before they can do any more damage. Jack felt a sense of purpose settle over him. He had no idea how they would accomplish such a task, but one thing was clear. He was in this with Illyra, no matter what it took. He had come to care for her, not just as a mysterious alien, but as a person who had been through unimaginable pain and was now fighting for her freedom. Illyra turned, her sharp eyes scanning the streets around them, ensuring no one was nearby. She motioned for Jack to follow her as she led the way toward an abandoned warehouse in the distance. This is where we'll start, Illyra said as they approached the building. I have a contact inside. They know more about the project and the people behind it. Jack felt a sense of urgency pulse through him as they entered the dark, decaying building. The air was thick with dust and the smell of old machinery, but there was a flicker of hope. If Illyra's contact had the information they needed, they might finally get the answers that had eluded them for so long. As they moved deeper into the warehouse, the lights flickered, casting long shadows along the walls. Jack could hear the sound of his heartbeat in his ears, and the silence around them seemed to stretch out forever. Every corner they turned felt like it could be the last, but Illyra moved with purpose, as if she knew exactly where they were headed. Finally, they reached a small room in the back of the warehouse. The door creaked open, revealing a man sitting at a desk, hunched over a computer screen. He looked up as they entered, his eyes narrowing when he saw Illyra. Illyra, the man said, his voice low. I didn't think I'd see you again. We need answers, Illyra replied, her voice tense. What do you know about the project, about the people who are after me? The man sighed deeply, his hands shaking slightly. I've been trying to get out of it for years, but they won't. Let me go. I know who's behind it. I know what they've done to you, and to others. But if you're going to stop them, you'll need more than just answers. You'll need a plan. Jack looked at Illyra, his heart pounding. This was it. The answers they had been searching for were finally within reach. But what would they learn? And how far would they have to go to stop the people who had ruined so many lives? The truth was closer than ever. But so were the dangers they faced. Asterisk. The warehouse felt colder now, the walls closing in on them as the man behind the desk leaned forward, his hands trembling as he typed quickly on the keyboard. His face was lined with years of fear, regret, and exhaustion. He had clearly been caught in the web of the powerful people who sought to control Illyra and others like her. Jack and Illyra stood, waiting for the information that could change everything. The man's fingers paused over the keys, and his eyes flicked nervously between Jack and Illyra. They've been tracking you, the man said, his voice low and steady. And they're not just looking for you. They want every werewolf, every last one of your kind. They have plans. Plans that could change everything. Plans that will put this entire planet under their control. Jack's stomach twisted as the implications of his words sank in. Whoever these people were, they had resources beyond anything Jack had ever imagined. The experiments weren't just about controlling Illyra, they were part of a much larger agenda, the man continued. There's a facility deep underground. It's where they've been conducting their most dangerous research. It's protected. But I've managed to get you access to the main database. You'll find everything you need to bring them down. Illyra's eyes burned with determination as she turned to Jack. This is it. The heart of everything we've been running from. Jack nodded, his jaw set. They had come this far, but they weren't just going to uncover the truth. They were going to put an end to it. They would expose the organization's secrets and destroy everything they had worked to build. The man handed Illyra a small data chip. This will get you inside, but be careful. If they catch you ... it's over. You can't do this alone. You'll need to be ready for anything. Illyra pocketed the chip with a swift movement, her expression unreadable. We're ready, she said. Thank you. As they left the room, Jack could feel the weight of the decision they were about to make. This wasn't just a fight for survival anymore. It was a battle for freedom, for the truth. For everything Illyra had lost and for everything Jack was about to lose. The journey to the facility was tense. They had to take back roads, avoid detection, and stay hidden from prying eyes. Illyra, with her enhanced senses, led the way, moving like a shadow in the night. Jack stayed close, the chill of the air settling into his bones as the hours passed. Every corner they turned, every step they took, felt like they were walking closer to the edge of a precipice. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, they reached the entrance. It was hidden beneath an abandoned industrial site, guarded by heavy security. The walls were high, reinforced with steel and reinforced glass. This is it, Illyra said, her voice calm but full of resolve. Once we get in, there's no turning back. Jack looked at her, his heart pounding in his chest. Are you sure about this? Illyra gave him a small, almost reassuring smile. I've been running for too long. It's time to finish this. Together. They approached the massive steel door. Illyra inserted the data chip into the slot beside it. A red light blinked, then turned green. The heavy door creaked open, revealing a dark hallway beyond. The air inside was cold, sterile, and smelled of metal and chemicals. They moved quickly, following the map the man had given them, winding through narrow hallways, avoiding guards and cameras. Every step brought them closer to the truth, closer to the heart of the operation. The door to the control room was ahead, guarded by 2 soldiers. Illyra didn't hesitate. With a quick glance at Jack, she charged forward, her claws extended. The soldiers never had a chance to react before she took them down, one after another. Jack rushed in after her, his heart racing as they approached the terminal dot at the control panel. Illyra tapped the keys, connecting to the database. Jack watched her, anxious, as the screens flickered to life. A map appeared on the screen, showing a series of rooms and hidden chambers deep beneath the facility. This is it, Illyra muttered, her eyes scanning the screen. The research labs, the weaponized subjects. It's all here. And I'm going to make sure they never use this again. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the facility. Red lights flashed, and the sound of boots echoed down the halls. They had been discovered. Go! Illyra shouted, grabbing Jack's arm. We need to destroy the main server. Now! They ran down the corridor, a trail of destruction behind them as they tore through guards and blocked doors. They finally reached the main server room, the heart of the operation. The massive control panel in front of them was filled with flashing lights and holographic displays. Illyra didn't hesitate. She ripped out wires, tore apart the systems with her claws, and within moments, the server sparked and exploded, sending a shockwave through the room. Get down! Jack shouted, pulling Illyra to the ground as the facility began to shake. The explosion rocked the building, sending shockwaves throughout the underground complex. The walls crumbled around them, alarms ringing louder than ever. The system was crashing, and the lights flickered in and out. "We did it," Illyra whispered, looking at Jack with a fierce, satisfied expression. "They won't be able to hurt anyone else." But just as they thought they were safe, the building trembled again. The ground cracked beneath them, and from the shadows, a dark figure emerged. It was the man with the scar. He had survived. "You may have destroyed the server," he sneered, his voice full of venom. "But the war has only just begun." Illyra growled, her body shifting into a more defensive stance. "Then let's finish it." With one final powerful strike, Illyra took down the last of their enemies. The building crumbled, and the explosion that followed marked the end of the organization's reign. As the dust settled, Jack and Illyra stood amidst the ruins, breathing heavily. They had won. The truth had been exposed, the experiments stopped, and the fight for freedom had been won. But the world was forever changed.